understand trauma in a different way, and that we can have experiences that literally form every part of our personality, every part of our thought processes that don't tick those boxes. And so that was the last puzzle piece, not only for telling the story the way I wanted to, but for understanding my life.
Hey mama, welcome to Naturally Empowered Living, your safe space to guiding you on your unapologetic self-awakening journey to learning your energy of alignment and feeling good again. This is your weekly sanctuary to wake up from autopilot and transform the way you approach motherhood and life through the power of meditation, energetics, and root cause therapy. It's my mission to help you embody the foundations of self-love, trust, and inner connection to be unapologetic in the evolution of who you are. Here, we honor all parts of ourselves, the messy and the magic, the shadows and the light. If you are ready to get to the roots of cultivating real change, warm up that cold coffee, pop in your earbuds, and tighten that top knot, mama. Let's discover our power within together. Hello, beautiful mamas. Welcome to Naturally Empowered Living, formerly the Balanced Mom Method podcast, but with the same impactful mission of helping you be unapologetic in who you are. I'm your host, Jenna Smith, and today we have a truly inspiring guest with us, Tracey Yokas. She is a mom, wife, artist, author, and passionate advocate for mental health awareness. She just released her first book, a memoir, Bloodlines, a memoir of harm and healing, and it is a powerful account of her teenage daughter's mental health crisis and their journey of helping her through it. And within that, she became aware of her own childhood trauma and the essential healing work that she had to undertake in order to be the type of mom and person that she aspired to be. I can't say enough about Tracey. I'm so excited. I just want to pass the mic over to you because I'm already getting tears in my eyes. I would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit more and just share as far back as you feel, as you want to, just about you, your story, and then your daughter's journey and just how everything came to present moment.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Jenna. I am stoked to be here with you and to have this conversation. Gosh, I mean, I guess I'll start about 12 years ago, around 2012. I think that's 12 years ago. Math hashtag. My daughter was a teenager and it was the summer before her 8th grade year of school. My mother died very unexpectedly, and my daughter and my mom were very close. So we did not realize this at the time, but it turns out that my mother's death would end up being a trigger for my daughter. And so it was literally one day like a light switch, flipped. One day everything was fine. We were living life. It was normal, school, friends, activities, all the things. And then the next day it was very different. And she at first started to eat less, and then it was less and less, and then almost nothing at all. And she would eventually be diagnosed with disordered eating, NOS for anybody who uses that language, and also severe depression. So the story, which took me about 10 years to write, chronicles that time, the steps we took and the things we tried to do to help her, the help we got. Not all the help was helpful, as readers will see, but the book is definitely not about lambasting the system because the people we encountered by and large were very dedicated, helping individuals. And also then I intercut scenes from my childhood to help illuminate the experiences that I had that ended up really forming the type of adult I became, the type of wife I became, particularly the type of mother I became, friend, all the things. I did never see myself up until really recently. Actually, it took many years of writing and rewriting and going to therapy for me to understand that people can have trauma in their childhood that doesn't tick the normal boxes, what are called these adverse childhood experiences of physical abuse, sexual abuse, living in extreme poverty, having a parent who's incarcerated, all of these things. That was not my experience at all. So I grew up not seeing myself in the trauma literature, not understanding myself that way. I knew I had a lot of issues, like I had trouble holding on to friendships. I was doing things that didn't make me feel good, and I didn't understand why, and all of these things. But it wasn't until very late in the process that my most recent, and I mean like just a couple years ago, therapist helped me understand trauma in a different way, and that we can have experiences that literally form every part of our personality, every part of our thought processes that don't tick those boxes. And so that was the last puzzle piece, not only for telling the story the way I wanted to, but for understanding my life the way I wanted um, to put the work into the world, because I really believe, especially moms, we're so driven to help our kids, to, take care of them when they're not feeling good, to fix what's wrong. And I tried to do that. Of course, I wanted to help her. I wanted to solve the problem, and we got help along the way. But I felt this overwhelming sense that I would later understand was a trauma response in terms of codependency and all of these things, to fix this problem. I needed to fix this, except I wasn't capable of fixing it because I actually had no control over her illness. So as time went by and she was actually getting more ill and sinking further into her behaviors, and I was getting more dysregulated myself. We finally got to the point where it was an emotional rock bottom for myself of understanding I need to do my own work here. This whole situation is unhealthy. I actually don't have the capability to control her illness. So the only thing I can control is myself, and to become the healthiest version of myself possible, not only in the hope of showing her a path that she could follow similarly and helping our relationship, but first and foremost, helping myself, which was so counterintuitive to how I understood mothering to be up to that point.
Mhm. I have so many questions for you. So the one note that I do want to say, because right when you said that the trauma without ticking all the boxes, because I feel like there's that normalization, or when we all are up, our upbringing, we all have responses, even our perceptions or how we took something from someone else's, just something that they said to us and we took completely how we wanted to take it. Like that can be considered trauma, right? And I just feel that sometimes we don't feel adequate enough to call ourselves like, oh, well, we don't fit, the sexual trauma, or, the examples that you shared. So we just overlook it or continue to shove it under the rug. So thank you for sharing that, because I recently heard like the little T traumas and the big T traumas, or, different kind of vocabulary. And I'm like trying to figure out a different word than trauma altogether to make it more accepting within ourselves and whole within ourselves. Do you kind of resonate with that at all?
I definitely do. And I mean, one description of trauma I heard, I too don't have a better word at this point for it. I mean, there are other words for sure. So
Mhm.
there are people who call it intergenerational trauma. There are people who call it little t, big T. There are people who call it being raised, my experience, by emotionally immature parenting. I think you're right. Everybody has to find the words that resonate the most for them. That's a tricky thing about healing, is we all process differently. We all understand differently. We all have our own way of viewing the world. So words can be complicated. But yes, I mean, I didn't see myself that way. And what I didn't expect at all was to, when the patterns, because it's about the patterns
Mhm.
and the way, I mean, from the time we're still in our mommy's tummies, I mean, we're talking about stuff that gets handed down through the generations that our parents didn't know where it was traumatic for them, and back, and then they have their own experiences. So
Mhm.
one way I heard it described that I think was very helpful too was that it's less about the actual thing that happens and more about how you are met. Because remember, we're children. So this is happening to us a lot of it starts before we have language at all. So it's how we're met when these circumstances that are less than optimal happen to us.
Mhm.
So are we met with compassion? Are we met with understanding? Are we met with conscious presence by our caregivers? Are we met in a way, excuse me, that helps us understand what's happening to us, helps us give us language around it, helps us regulate all the things, or not? pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And it is sort of that cut and dry, because I think most of our parents, at least at my age, I'm 55, so our parents weren't having these kinds of conversations back in the day. That
Mm-hmm.
was the generation. My dad was a World War II veteran, so we're talking about people who were told to get over their SHIT
Mm-hmm.
and move on. So each of my parents had trauma from their upbringings, and then they got together, and then I was supposed to have a baby sister who passed away at birth. This was never discussed, ever. I mean, 99% of the time, I didn't even remember I was supposed to have a sister. Well,
Mm-hmm.
certainly my parents didn't forget that they were supposed to have another child. So all of that grief and the mourning and the despair, and none of these things were being addressed, but you can bet it was fully present in our environment, and it's just nobody was dealing with it. So I think not only were my needs not being met in the way that I needed as a teeny child learning about all of these things, but my parents' needs weren't being met either. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, then they weren't talking about self-care, they weren't talking about therapy, they weren't talking about any of these things. And it's just a very dysfunctional dynamic, which does
Mm-hmm.
not mean, by the way, that they did not love me, because
Right.
they did love me. And I know they loved me, but that doesn't change the fact that there was codependency and enmeshment and a host of other things that have big fancy words attached. It doesn't really matter, only in the sense of they formed who I became as an adult. And I didn't understand any of that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I mean, and that just brings it to like taking our ownership of doing our work. And I'm so like, I, everything that you said with you have to do the work for yourself to be able to help your daughter. So talk to me about this with how did healing generational trauma help with your relationship with your daughter and help
Yeah.
that whole dynamic?
One of my favorite things to talk about, because I think a lot of us think the same thing, especially when our kids first get ill. There's such a focus on the behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of fear, which makes complete sense. If your child stops eating, it's a terrifying thing. And if you see them hurting themselves, it's terrifying, but we don't make our best decisions for ourselves or the people we love from the base of fear. So there's that. I would say also for, I don't know, close to a year and a half, 2 years, my therapist was asking me every single week what I could do to take care of myself. And I literally went over my head that she was asking me to do what I wanted my daughter to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how can we take care of ourselves? And I was like, I can't do that. I don't have the right to do that. I'm not entitled to do that. What kind of mother would do that? Well, her child just completely missed the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, when I hit my emotional rock bottom, which took quite a while, there were a series of things that happened, that my daughter, as I said already, was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And then we had to, by the way, I should state, for anyone who's listening, I have her permission, of course, and my husband's to tell our story. I feel like that should be a given since the book is in the world, but in today's day and age, can't take it for granted.
Of course, of course.
Um, we had to do an exercise in the treatment center where she was going, and it was just the simple, innocuous, what they call the whole person wheel, which the idea of it was just to look at these like 6 parts of our lives and see what needed more attention. Like, we have many roles, we have many parts of ourselves that it's hard to balance, because balance, is like, what does that even mean? How do you do it? Where does it come from? So my wheel, we were supposed to use these crayons and color it in, and everybody was talking about how they were, 90% fulfilled in this and 100% fulfilled in that. And I like had nothing that was 90 or 100% fulfilled. And where I was in my brain space at that time it was like the physical manifestation of my low self-esteem. And the only other person's chart who looked similar to mine in that whole day was my daughter's.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a come to Jesus moment, if you like that language, also, where it was like, okay, I have got my own things to deal with here. I really have to shift my focus. And it still did not happen right away. I mean, healing, one of the things I think we need to talk about more about healing is it's hard work. It takes time. You don't realize that you're, enmeshed or codependent or whatever word you want to use. And then suddenly you're just over it. I mean, these are patterns that took a long time to form. They're very ingrained. So it can be daunting when you realize, oh, I've learned something now, but then you kind of forget it and you have to relearn it and you have to relearn it again. But once you start sensing the liberation that's on the other side of that healing, feel the compassion, because it's a feeling difference. It's a knowing difference too, but it's a feeling difference inside your body that for someone like me has never had those feelings before in their life. So what freedom and what amazing joy and gratitude comes along when you start to see that your parents were constrained by things as well. I never had more compassion for my parents than I did after I really understood the hold that the traumatic patterns that were passed down had on them and
Mhm.
how they passed that on to me. I was able to look at them more fully as human beings rather than I'm the little girl of these two people and all these things happened or whatever. You don't look at it that way anymore. It's just such a liberating experience. And they had already passed away, both sadly, by the time we had this journey and I had this learning. So I didn't get to experience being alive with them with this new learning. But that doesn't change the fact that I feel better about our relationships. You can still heal your parental relationships even if they're not here anymore. And that was something I didn't know either until I started doing it.
Mhm.
And so tying up to your question, because I went all over the place there, but tying back to your question, all of this helped my relationship with my daughter in different ways over the long term. The immediately, while we were still in the throes of everything that was happening, I had to learn how to regulate my nervous system so that I could be more calm and present with her when she was dysregulated, which required me to take care of myself because I needed to understand what was happening inside me every time she got triggered. I was getting triggered and and off we went. So learning how to remain calm, as simple as that sounds, it's not simple, and it is a very powerful tool for parents who are having children who are struggling. Learning how to regulate your own nervous system, many of us didn't get that in childhood, is such an important tool for helping our kids who are struggling.
Amen. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I there's just so much depth and there's so much just honoring and acknowledging within ourselves and allowing it to come up because of the generation, let's say that we're in, where we came from or where our parents came from, kind of what you were saying a little bit ago of we're kind of that first bit of like voicing it, of seeing it and doing something about it. And I feel that within all of me, like there's this ripple of change that's happening. And it's so beautiful to see and just the unfolding of it. So what are some common themes of like generational healing as we battle within, our what do you want to call it? Our past selves, our inner child, our, breaking generational patterns within disordered eating, since you've had, experience with that, depression, may possibly self-harm. I know that these are very personal, very sensitive topics, but kind of how can you speak on that a little?
Yeah, I'm an open book for better or worse.
I
So
love I love this conversation. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Well, gosh, that's a big question. So, in regard to, let's just say, starting out with eating disorder, weight, body image issues, and being female in America, I mean, we're all kind of aware that that's a really still very problematic situation.
Mhm.
My body in my childhood was like the center, especially for my mom, of her ire. So I didn't look the way that she wanted me to. She and my pediatrician put me on my first diet when I was 11. I basically stayed on a diet until I was in my 40s, doing that whole yo-yo thing. I was never diagnosed officially with an eating disorder. I'm not sure what people in my generation were. I don't know that that was a regular topic of conversation then, to your point. But certainly I learned my whole worldview got filtered through my body in place and time and what people thought about it, what I thought about it, what was going to be done about it, what needed to be done about it, using diets and going to the gym, things that could be self-care as weapons actually against myself rather than using them in a healthy way. So all of that dynamic I knew didn't feel good as I was a kid, and it didn't feel good as I grew up. But because I didn't really understand how patterns repeat and this sort of thing, when I had my daughter, it was like, oh gosh, I don't want to do what my parents did. So I'll just do the opposite. So try not to talk about it, not talk about food, not, do any of the same things that were done to me, but opposite doesn't turn out necessarily to really be that different energetically.
Mhm.
So it's really complicated because I think there are parts of it that are universal, but I also think it's very, very personal.
Mhm.
So for me, I don't believe I would have been able to learn all the things I learned if I didn't have a regular therapy routine in my life. I got into therapy the first time when I was 30. I'm 55 now again, when my daughter was 6 months old, because I knew I don't have a good relationship with my mom. Things are really complicated. I don't want to replicate this. I don't exactly know everything that's going on. And it was very helpful. I did see a bunch of dynamics. I did learn a lot of things. I ended up staying in for a few years back then. So over the years, it's been, time in and out and in and out. But I do think that therapy alone, and I don't want to minimize therapy because I want to say again, I love therapy. I'm pro therapy. I think every human being on the planet could benefit from therapy. Anyone who has the wherewithal in any way, shape, or form to get some therapy, I think will benefit from it, especially if you're working with a therapist who, not everybody is good at what they do. That's a reality. But if you're
Mhm.
working with a skilled therapist, you can learn so, so much. But having the ability to have other people in your life, community, friends, these are things that I didn't really have for a long time. I saw a lot of broken friendships in my rearview mirror, like looking in my past, didn't understand why I couldn't hold on to friendships, just still didn't understand that I was basically a walking trauma response. And I know that sounds a little bit dramatic, but I know anyone who has a history like mine will 100% understand what I'm talking about. Everything you think, everything you feel is filtered through that experience, but you do not know it.
Mhm.
So you just feel like, okay, I don't meet this criteria over here. So that just means something's wrong with me. Well, there's maybe something wrong. I hate that word, but there's maybe something wrong with the way you're engaging with people because of where it's coming from, but there's not something wrong with you.
Mhm.
So while we do need to maybe learn some new language, maybe learn what it means to have a boundary, maybe figure out what our values actually are, because I didn't know that I could even choose my own values until I was in my 40s.
Mhm.
I mean, all of these things, some may resonate with some people and not with others, because as I said, it's very personal. But having somebody who has no skin in the game, I like to say about therapy, your therapist just wants to help you help yourself, was crucial for me to understanding all the dynamics at play and how then to start unraveling that. We've heard the kind of overused onion analogy, right? We're under there somewhere. We've
Yeah.
got to peel back all that, unhealthy layer of stuff we've gotten. It's not just our parents, of course. I'm not like sitting here to lambaste parents around the world. I mean, there's society, there's bullies. We can't say enough about how toxic bullying is. It was played a huge part in my daughter's situation. It played a huge part in my own mental health. We can't lose sight of that. So it's not just one thing, but our perfect essence of humanness is underneath all of that and doesn't need to be fixed. We just need to like go back to our authenticity and find out who we are. And it just takes some time.
Gosh, I mean, everything you said was beautiful, but that last bit of like, we are all so different. And you said in the very beginning with how different vocabulary, different terms are going to resonate with each of us differently, and how there's so many different factors. I just like umbrella it, external factors, internal factors, because there's so much and we can't identify. I mean, even within ourselves, let alone helping someone else through it, there's so much just capacity and complexity. And I feel like you just hit the nail on the head with going inward and focusing on you, focusing on being you, because by being you and finding your authenticity, you're going to be able to, okay, maybe this friendship didn't work out because we are on two completely different paths, or maybe because I wasn't treated how I know that I need to be treated. Like it's the perspectives. It's when we are confident in who we are. And I just got chills down my body when you just finished with that, because it's so beautifully said, because there's so there's so much noise, right? There's so much out there. But when we come inside and really like get to know ourselves and get to know our own beings and essence, then we can move outward. So thank
And
you.
when you're facing the world from a perspective of people
Mhm.
pleasing is actually a very desperate, sort of intense, unhealthy place to be. I
Mhm.
mean, we've glorified people pleasing, especially in women, because it's like, yeah, and especially in moms, forget it, because like, we're no longer an individual entity. We're a mom, and so we're just going to be running around taking care of everybody. At least that's what I learned.
Mhm.
And that was true in my attempted friendships. It was true in all my relationships, but it's really very, well, one word some people use around it is narcissistic. I
Mhm.
think it's true because that's all about yourself. It's not actually about the other person. So it doesn't mean as we get healthy that we no longer do things for the people we love. Of course, it doesn't mean that. Where are we doing it from? Where is it flowing from? And it's flowing from when we're taking care of ourselves, when we have good boundaries, when we're still doing things for the people we love. It's a whole different emotional experience inside our own self and also as experienced by the other person.
Mhm.
So, like sometimes if you imagine your brain sort of before it's healed, it's like, whoa, there's rumination, there's all the things, there's rejection, there's low self-esteem, there's all those bad core messages, and I'm selfish and
Mhm.
everything is coming in and going out through that mess. So I can't necessarily say concretely what does that mean for how somebody else experiences it, except for yucky a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Like you're trying to get what you need in a way that's sort of really unhealthy and desperate. Whereas when you start to uncover your authentic self, just like you said, you're more balanced, you're more in alignment. It takes work, but you're more comfortable with who you are.
Mhm.
And I know I listened to you before. You say you met your husband, like right after you started to really love yourself. Boom, there he was. I
Mhm.
mean, that happened to me with my friendships. I was already married when the things happened with my daughter, but once I started doing this work, becoming more authentic in my own self, you naturally start to become more conscious of the people in your sphere who you're like interested in and they're interested in you. And that doesn't mean every single relationship will work out the way you expect because expectations equals yuck too.
Mhm.
But you are just more calm, more comfortable, more confident in the nice way. And you can attract people into your world. I have a community of women who come together to do art now because creativity was a huge part of my healing journey. And these are things that just naturally transpired because of coming out of myself. I look at self-care as like an inside out job. There are the outside things too. Of course, I love a good mani-pedi as much as the next person, but the healing journey coming out of us is the self-care I think most of us don't understand or neglect or forget about or whatever. This is what really can impact and most importantly my relationship with my daughter, which
Mhm.
I couldn't. She's 25 now. She's an adult. She's in recovery, living her own life, and lives 6 hours away, so we don't get to spend as much time together as we would like. But the communication and the comfort level now we have with each other, the acceptance of who we are as human beings, our ability to talk about these hard dynamics, these patterns that she definitely learned from my husband and I when she was young, because this stuff, like I said, didn't start until she was, in middle school and
Mhm.
then high school, but we talk about it. We can have conversation about it. I can say, this is a pattern that you got from me and dad that's not that healthy. Let's talk about, doesn't mean we don't love each other, doesn't mean any of those things, but it means it doesn't serve us. So how can we talk about that and work on continuing to heal that, work on healing it in our relationship, you healing it in your friendships, etc.
Mhm. Yeah. So you mentioned middle school, high school. It brought me back to the bullies that you mentioned, kind of had a little bit of a play. So to kind of zoom out a little bit as just societal issues, how do you feel? You could use your personal experience or just everything that you've kind of learned and gathered throughout the years too, with how do you feel that these societal issues play at inducing this mental health challenge that so many teens, let's just use that, but so many people just face, the low self-esteem. It's horrible. It's so sad. It's heartbreaking.
Yes, and the stats are sadly moving in the wrong direction. We know that post-pandemic, kids are struggling more than ever before. So it's a very serious concern and something that needs to be in daily conversation. I feel from my perspective, I mean, we could talk about social media all day long. I mean, I don't know having, I mean, of course, parents should try to have boundaries around social media, but it's just so hard. It's so pervasive today. But from my perspective, I feel like, again, it sort of comes down to we can only control ourselves.
Mhm.
And so, how are we talking about mental health in regular, everyday conversation in our home? It does not mean that someone in our house has to be diagnosed with mental illness, although statistics bear out that tens of millions of people have diagnoses in children and adults. So, if it's not on our home, we certainly know somebody who's struggling with their mental health. We might not know that we know because there's still a lot of shame around it.
Mhm.
So I say we all have responsibility for normalizing these types of conversations, whether we think somebody has a problem, quote unquote, or not, because we have to get more comfortable talking about it, not only for the benefit of ourselves, but for the people we care about, our coworkers, our friends, our family, our community, in a very grassroots sense.
Mhm.
That is what we for sure concretely have control over, is how we talk about it in our own homes, how we normalize it, how we don't buy into the stigma, how we don't buy into the fear, how we just talk about, I'm struggling today, or however you want to approach it. It's just very important we've lopped off our heads for some reason from the rest of our body, so we don't have those problems talking about other physical conditions. If we have, God forbid, cancer or something less severe, I mean, we just talk about these things, and we have to make talking about our mental health just as normal as talking about anything else.
Mhm. Do you feel comfortable sharing just an example for our listeners? Kind of how does a conversation look within your household? Like with you struggling or a family member or anyone?
Well, I mean, I guess now, again, it's been a thing that's been a work in progress. So, a lot of our conversations started in therapy and sort of learning. I mean, one of the reasons I really think if your child does receive a diagnosis, one of the most important things you can do is get yourself into therapy, not only to deal with your own thoughts, feelings, and emotions, but you might not, the things that you did as a parent, the way you communicated or whatever, just might not work anymore. And that's not a criticism. It's not a fault. It's just reality. I
Mhm.
heard somebody, Dr. Becky Kennedy, Dr. Good Inside, saying, like,
Oh.
if you wanted to teach I know she's the best. If you wanted to teach your kid Chinese, you wouldn't just the language, Chinese language, you wouldn't just expect yourself to know how to speak Chinese. I mean, you would have to learn how to speak Chinese and then you would teach your kid. I
Mhm.
mean, it's the same sort of dynamic. Like, we might not know how to talk about these things, but that doesn't mean that we don't do the work to learn.
Mhm.
So now it's much easier over a decade into this journey. Plus, of course, all the moms are intuitive to their kids. So I can look at her on a Zoom and know whether, we need a more in-depth conversation or not. But I mean, literally, I think just asking from a place of pure curiosity. I mean, I think we just are so busy today that
Mhm.
we've forgotten, like, hey, how are you? Blah, 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 and we've
Yeah.
already moved on. We didn't even give the person the space to answer. And so it's like, oh, fine, and blah, 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 blah. So really slowing down, a lot of this work is awareness,
Mhm.
becoming aware of what's going on inside your own self, honoring that, allowing those sensations to be, not just pushing them down. It can be hard. I still get afraid. I still get afraid. It's a trauma response. My throat gets tight. My chest starts to pound. If I feel like maybe I'm going to ask her something and I know she's struggling, like I can feel myself starting to get activated, like, oh, I'm going to have to jump in before I can go, okay, you're okay. It's okay. It's all right. A lot of that self-talk. So literally slowing down from a place of more consciousness inside your own self, patience, calmness, and sit down and say, I really want to talk about how things are going. I feel like I've seen you struggling. Can you share? Would you share a little bit about that? That doesn't mean it's always going to work. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, believe me, I get it. I had a teenager at one point too. There was a lot of slamming of doors. There was a lot of swearing. There were a lot of walking on eggshells. There was a lot of not being able to communicate for a long time or only being able to communicate through a third party like therapy because teenager
Mm-hmm.
plus then mental illness complicated the matter. So, but we have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's going to be uncomfortable if you haven't done this before. And if you don't know what you're doing, get into therapy and say, I'm concerned. I want to learn how to communicate better. I want to understand what it means to use I statements. I feel whatever, or I'm seeing you struggle and I want to help. Let me know how I can help you. And if they don't want help right now, that's okay too. I think as parents, we often will take things personally. Like, I'm just, I'm here to support you. Why won't you let me help you? Blah, 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 blah. And that's very oppressive. That's a very oppressive dynamic on the person. And if we're talking about teens, this is, a critical phase where they're gaining their independence. So they're not going to respond well to that kind of dynamic. So there's therapies, there's books like Nonviolent Communication that can help. But I would say, again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but trying not, if you really feel like your child is struggling and you suspect mental health issues, mental illness, don't assume it's behavioral. Like a lot of times we just assume because that's how we were trained, my kid's just acting out. It's like just a teenager thing. And that could be true. Of course, that could be true, but don't assume that it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Is to try not to go it alone. And if you get into therapy and you and your therapist are working together, you learn better communication skills, you have a more open dialogue, even if you don't experience nirvana in the short term, that's laying the foundation for as they get older for you. We all, like we know, right? The kids kind of go away and then they come back again. We all did it. We went away and well, not all of us, but we came back again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you want to have that foundation of being the healthiest version of yourself that you can, the most self-cared version of yourself that you can, so you can have the secure attachment and work on healthier relationship when the timing allows it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned awareness, and I instantly because I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my 2-year-old isn't quite there yet. She's, just learning how to talk, but my 5-year-old is very in tune, very, working on the communication and the feelings, the big feelings. He's my little Hulk Sour Patch Man, but he's so sensitive, so we're very interactive in that sense of the sensitivity, the Velcro to me, then the aggression. And when you said the awareness, because him and I have been talking a lot about awareness, even just the spatial, awareness around you, crossing the street, that type of stuff, but also the internal awareness and your internal feelings. And coming from a parent's perspective, I feel like my child wants to always have heart to hearts at bedtime. I don't think he's stalling, but that's when he opens up and I'm like, oh my gosh, Jace, I'm so tired. Right. But I've come to just embrace these moments because we have our deepest, he's such a wise old soul. He's so just smart. And the other day it came to me because he was saying I'm just a struggle boy. We had a hard day. He had a hard day, big emotions. I'm just a struggle boy. Life is so hard. And in my mind, I'm like, Jace, you're 5 years old. But I caught myself because the acceptance of his feelings in that moment. And I was so proud of myself for not saying you're only 5, because for him, I mean, we yelled too much that day. And, then we talked about well, we asked you 3 times, politely. And so we had that conversation back and forth. And it was just a big revelation moment of the acceptance of where they are at the space or time that they are. Let it be, 5-year-olds, teenagers. I'm scared out of my mind for teenage years in schooling. And oh yeah, so I just feel so deeply with just the communication, the love, the compassion, what you shared a little earlier was just knowing that you are a safe space, you are home and you are always there for them. in, when they're having their struggles and going through their hard times.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you shared that story because it's amazing. And it's a perfect example. I mean, yeah, we have a tendency, and I know I didn't catch myself because that's not how I was parented. And
Mhm.
it's like, so and so hurt my feelings or whatever. It's like, oh, well, what are you going to, brush yourself off, kind of get over it.
Mhm.
Or how do, what our kids say impact us? Are we talking about how that hurt our feelings? I didn't do that because, again, I didn't know that I could. I mean, the thought never even entered my mind. I think, your generation of parents, I don't want to use the word smarter because that makes it sound like I'm saying I'm not smart. And that's not what I mean. But I mean, we just were not parented that way.
Mhm.
And the thoughts never even entered my mind. So being able to have that dialogue with my daughter didn't exist for us until she was much older.
Mhm.
So I want to say that it's never too late. I really believe that. I mean, as they get older, maybe there's more undoing to do if they don't have the foundation. But I saw a meme not that long ago, similar to what you were just sharing about how it was like somebody's daughter left their paper at school, like little, 4 or 5 years old. And they were so upset. She was so upset. It was so important to her. And the idea of it was, well, you can blow off your kid. Like it's just a piece of paper. What do you, for whatever, you'll get it tomorrow. But it's not going to be a piece of paper when they're a teenager.
Mhm.
It's not going to be a piece of paper when they're in college. And if you don't have that relationship that enables them to share their thoughts and feelings and experience, help them with that discomfort, help them work through that dysregulation, then over a piece of paper, they're not going to come to you when it's something else. And
Mhm.
they're not going to have the tools that they need. So again, it's important to me to say that this isn't about berating ourselves for not having these skills. Many of us got them when we were young, but many of us did not.
Mhm.
So it's about empathy and compassion for ourselves and just having that understanding. And again, the word awareness so that we can start to work on those dynamics and work on the relationships with the people we care about most.
Exactly. It's so hard though too. I mean, because I feel like I got thrown into the spiritual awakening, I call it, of just this healing journey of myself when my oldest was born. And I'm just like, holy F, because it's like, I have no idea what I'm doing, how to be a parent, how to do da. And we're always, I don't want to use the word mess up our child, right? But like, there's always going to be things like we're never ever going to be perfect. So thank you for bringing light to that also. Like, it's never too late, to make that communication or, to create that bond. And yeah. So, okay, I have a couple more questions. They just kept flowing to me. So, what are some catalysts kind of in helping? I know you shared a little bit, but just with to reignite like the positive change, the reshaping of family dynamics, the healing, within breaking these generational cycles and these patterns, kind of what are those catalysts within your personal experience or what you've learned?
Well, that's a really good question. I would say, again, I kind of have to resort back to therapy
Mhm.
because I think the relationships that we have, even with the people who love us the most, our spouses, our kids, we can have a lot of preconceived notions about all of that we're not necessarily even aware of.
Mhm.
We're filtering all of our thoughts through the filters we've always had. We can tell a lot of stories. In fact, I would say I'll only speak for myself, but I feel like I told more stories to myself about the people I was closest to because they're the people you're closest to. So you feel on one hand like you know them the best, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're right
Mhm.
because you're filtering all of this stuff through the lens of your background and all these things. So you can actually tell more incorrect or skewed stories about the people that you're closest to than you would a stranger on the street because you don't have any preconceived notions about the stranger on the street walking by.
Mhm.
So I think getting into an environment where you can be safe, exploring those stories. For example, this is related to my own self, but I mentioned that wheel exercise we had to do in the treatment center and how I took that as evidence that I was like just the worst person. I was the worst mother. I was the worst person, the worst friend, the worst wife. I mean, look at my piece of paper. I clearly had no self-esteem. And I took it to therapy and she was like, that's a lot to get from one piece of paper. I mean, I was sobbing, look at what a loser I am, kind of all that stuff. And it was like, whoa, that is a lot to get from one piece of paper. I mean, nobody else in my life said that to me. We were all busy dealing with our own stuff. It wasn't anybody else's responsibility to say it to me. So I think that's a big key is getting into an environment to start with where there's, again, someone who's not invested in you saying the right thing or doing the right thing, who's not invested in you playing out your perfectionistic tendencies, your people-pleasing tendencies, so that all of this can start to move into the light.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's trapped inside our head, when we're over ruminating, when we're overthinking, when we're numbing, when we're dissociating, when we're in all of these unhealthy patterns, none of this is in the light.
Mm-hmm.
So it's stuck in all the places where it gets stuck. So as a catalyst, I really can't say enough about having a safe place to start to make these things come to our own awareness. And then that person, a therapist, will help you with tools we all need a toolkit. As much as I kind of railed against that for a while, we need toolkits to cope with tools that we will use.
Mm-hmm.
Putting 800 tools in your toolkit, if you're not going to use them, doesn't matter. So then that requires us to become more self-aware about what actually works for us. For me, journal writing, for me, having a gratitude practice, being in therapy, using meditation, these things. Well, that doesn't work for everybody, and that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't work on these patterns until you know they exist.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a crucial, crucial first step. Then for me, a natural outflowing of that was having friends, finally in my 40s. Having friendships that I still have now that I'm in my 50s with the same people, and then creating community where we don't necessarily have the depth of conversation, that really goes deep, deep, deep every time we get together to do art. But we are like-minded women wanting to live more authentically, coming together to play and have fun and to grow, who call each other on our shit. So if we're sitting there, the thing that's so powerful about a creative practice is it's a mirror held up to our face. So we hear our inner critic. As soon as we start making art and go, God, that's ugly. I mean, we're all over it if someone says that, because I feel like if you call something you create ugly, you might as well look in a mirror and say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's becoming conscious that you're doing it. Most of the time, women are saying these things. I'm sure men do too, but I just teach women.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even realize that word came out of their mouth,
Mm-hmm.
or that the criticism and the judgment came out of their mouth. So you have to be caught sometimes, and I mean that in the best way, doing these things to go, oh my God, I do. I judge myself all day long, and work on healing that pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking a few minutes, I don't advocate living in the past, but that's how we track our journey. So now I can say, if back then I probably had consciously and unconsciously negativity running through me like 95% of the time, now it's probably down in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And, I am reaping all the rewards of a healthier internal environment in my own self in every aspect of my life. So it has 100% been worth all the effort and the work and the practice and the forgetting and the relearning and the peeling back and all of that stuff, because you just don't want to go back to I don't want to go back to feeling that way anymore. And I know I don't have to.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. So, so beautiful. Tell us more about your memoir, where we could find it. If there's anything else that you want to share on it.
Thank you. So yes, it's called Bloodlines, a Memoir of Harm and Healing by Tracey Yokas. It's available everywhere books are sold, in paperback, and Kindle version is available, or Nook if you're a Nook person. Really, my intention behind the book for anyone who's going through now what we went through then, which is stats bear out thousands and thousands of people, is I back then was looking for books that would help me know what to do. what to do, what to do, how to solve this problem, what to do. And I could find books. There were a lot of books written by therapists, and those are, of course, very important, like books. But mine is the story. If you want to see your experience reflected in the storytelling version of a struggle and then healing, that is what my book was designed to do, was to let people know that they're not alone and that these kinds of occurrences, as dramatic as some of the things that we went through were, and they were, healing is still possible. We are living proof of it. In the book, it might seem like, because it's a book, oh, it's like, 300 pages and their problems are solved. That's not exactly how it went. But I really wanted people to be able to see themselves in our story and know that there's hope and know that they aren't alone.
That's so just heart-centered is the first thing that came to my mind. Like I was just having this pulsating. Thank you. I will link that in the show notes for everyone to go check out. I have one
Thank
final
you.
question. One,
Yes.
one final question I ask all my guests on the show. I'm really excited. Is you already shared one, so I'm gonna ask you to share another one. But what are some moments within your life that you just knew, like you knew that you were in, I call it your energy of alignment. So that you were authentically yourself. It could have been a choice, a crossroads, and maybe you took the wrong one, but then you got back on. So kind of when you knew that you were authentically yourself following your path, can you just very open-ended, I know, but that's the beauty of this question too, is just take it wherever you feel led.
Thank you. Well, I feel like maybe early on, it was when I finally had the actual realization that taking care of myself was the right kind of priority to have.
Mhm.
That was a huge insight. And I think people can expect insights to be really big, life altering, like we're moving, and they can be, of course. But in my experience, a lot of my insights came in the quietest moments. And
Mhm.
it was a new insight that didn't change necessarily how my world looked on the outside, but it changed everything how I was experiencing my world on the inside.
Mhm.
So having that realization about self-care and determining to focus on myself as a means of healing really was one of the most profound moments. And then getting quiet enough to tune into my intuition. So what did that mean? What was it going to look like? We were still in the throes of a lot of struggle, and then rediscovering a creative practice that was very, very simple at first, but then took on a life of its own as time went by. But allowing myself the opportunity to focus on that and then use that again. I didn't really look at it this way at the time, but it was like then my creativity, which was fun, got hard. And I
Mhm.
had to explore, like, why is this not fun anymore? Well, it's not fun anymore because of I was doing to my process on the inside.
Mhm.
So, like, writing myself a note that says my creativity is fun, like letting go of that tight clenching all the time, not good enough stuff really was repeated many moments, because as I said, it doesn't happen in one go, but was the foundational approach to layering on top of that. And then now I try to create workshops and programs. I teach art classes for people who don't consider themselves artists, because we're all artists. I teach a workshop. I just created a workshop for our inner critic. So using my really basic lived experience in regular words to show people that anyone can do this work. It's not like some big secret. It is hard, but when we come together in community, it's a beautiful mix, because we really thrive when we can thrive alone, and that's part of a healing journey, realizing you actually like to be with yourself. But
Mhm.
how that plays out is in community with people we care about and people we love, and being able to love and receive love and to give it in the way I want is such a beautiful gift.
Beautiful. Thank you. So where can we find you?
TraceyYokasCreates.com. Just my name, TraceyYokas, creates.com. Talks about me, our journey, my toolkit, my classes, the book. And there's a free workbook for 32 pages with my top 8 tips if people are struggling with what we went through, having a loved one with a mental illness, mental health diagnosis. I'm going to be doing free workshops, just talking about the tips, answering questions, anything I can do to share the information that we've learned over the last 10 years or so.
Thank you so much. I will link everything in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time. I know this is going to be an hour-long episode, so I thank you for your extra time and just energy and space to be here with us today.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you so much, Jenna. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Until next week, my mamas and you, Tracey, simply continue to be you. You have everything inside of you to learn your energy of alignment and be unapologetic in who you are. We are sending our love and light.
Did you find this episode relatable or empowering? Peace with Mama Vavio.
Thank you for spending this sacred time with me on Naturally Empowered Living. I pray this episode has brought you a step closer to tuning into your energy of alignment. And if it has, please consider leaving a written review sharing how this show has impacted you. Your feedback truly lights me up and helps other moms find their way to this community. And if it feels right, please share this episode with another mom who might be struggling to remind her that she's never alone. Be sure to check the show notes for more ways to connect and explore how we could work together to reclaim your power and deepen your relationship within. Thank you. I appreciate all you are and all you do.